Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Founder Shift podcast. I am so excited to be here with you right now, and thank you so much for checking out the podcast. I want to give you, in this first episode, an idea of what we are here to do, some of the background and inspiration behind the podcast. I'll give you a little intro to me, but mostly I'm here to talk about you and how I want this podcast to be able to help you in your growth journey. So, I'm your host. I'm Jessica Noon. I am a people strategist. I am an org designer and organizational development specialist. And what that means is I work with founders and growing and changing businesses to connect people and teams and leadership to actual business growth in a very real way. I am obsessed with culture. I am obsessed with creating sustainable growth and scale. And I'm a little obsessed with being the rebel and busting the status quo. So that should give you a little bit of a taste of the vibe of this podcast. So, enough about me for now. I want to talk about you. This podcast is tailor made for growth stage founders. So maybe you're in it right now. Maybe you're working towards that 1 million mark, or maybe you've just started that process. You're right before what you would consider growth stage, and you want to be your best for it. You want to learn everything possible that you can from the experience of people who've scaled businesses before. You know your marketing, right? You know your pipeline. You've got it nailed. You know where your next clients are coming from. Survival is not an issue anymore. You are actually growing. You're respected in your field. You know what you're doing. And usually you have a team. When people first come to me, their team usually consists of an intern, a VA or an assistant, and maybe, a relative of yours that you're trying to mentor. And that's a beautiful thing. That probably got you a couple of hours back, but now you're looking at the future of your business and where you want to take it. And you don't really need to build a huge team, but you want to build a really targeted team, and you want to consider bringing on custom roles, finding those more senior, higher expertise hires, and you're really not sure how to start with that because it's different than when you're in corporate, right? All you know is that at this point, you have achieved some level of success, but you know that you're capable of more. But the problem is it's kind of uncharted, right? So I will say most founders out there who have achieved some pretty well-known success. A lot of them are the 10x bros, right? And look, that's there's nothing wrong with the bros. They have good advice that will get you money. And everyone knows money isn't really money. Money equals options, money equals choices. That's my philosophy. But is that all you want, right? There's not a lot of advice out there that is holistic enough to help you build a business that's truly not following someone else's blueprint. Because I can tell you too, the state of business and the state of startups right now, there's not a lot that is built on long-term thinking, built on lifetime value. There's not a lot that's not reactive, right? And the reality is that change is everywhere. Change is constant. It's going to be a part of life. So we can either react to it or we can design for it. That's my philosophy. Most people that work with me want to keep their businesses. They're not looking for a quick exit. They really want their business to sustain their life long term. They want to build something that they don't want to burn down in 5 years. They want to sustain it. They want to keep it. Ultimately, what we're working towards is freedom. Freedom to choose how you spend your time so that you don't disappear into your business. Because one of the things that's true about 10xing everything, it sounds good because who doesn't want 10x money and 10x options, right? But if you 10x literally everything, there's not a lot of you left. And the people who work with me want to have that freedom to choose how they spend their time, to change it day to day. They don't want to be locked in to this world where you are producing every dollar, that the business is dependent on you. So that's kind of the gap right now that I'm hoping this podcast can be a little part of filling. My vision for you is that you get to do the best freaking work of your life. You want to build a team that is right sized from day one. We don't want to create, this frenzy of hiring just because you're growing. One job title doesn't equal one result. And so I'm going to show you the nuance behind that. You want your team to feel like an engaged community of support, people who bring you fresh ideas, not just maintain what you have. Because when we're talking about growth and we're talking about scale, just doing more of the same stuff is not going to cut it. You're going to need to bring people on who have a point of view. And it might not be exactly how you would do it, but that's okay. We're looking here to multiply what we're doing and not just maintain it. And look, most of my clients, they also want time for life. They want to have a life. Many of my clients are either the breadwinners of their families or they're going it alone. They're holding up everything by themselves. It gets heavy. Humans can't exist like that, despite all the popular claims out there that you can survive on just all business all the time. Most of you also want time to travel and not be chained to your laptop. You want time with family or friends. You want to have brunch and not be texting the entire time, right? It's whatever it is that you want, whether that's reading for pleasure or, just like having a coffee in silence. You want more of that. You want things that fulfill you so that you can keep going and you can keep pouring into the business because there's something in the bucket. This can be engineered into your business from day one. You can build a culture, even if it's just for yourself and one or two other people. You can engineer a culture that you would want to work in if this business wasn't yours. Think about that for a second. If you didn't own the business that you have now, would you want to work in it? Maybe so. But I think some of you also feel a bit overextended, and that's okay. That's normal. That comes with growth stage, but there's also ways to alleviate that, not just for tomorrow, but for the long term. So we're going to talk more about that. Ultimately, yeah, you can get money, but what's the cost? How do you balance that to make sure that you're building something that you don't want to burn down? You can move fast, but do you have to break things? I'm going to tell you that you don't. We can move well and build things. Spoiler alert, there is another podcast coming, but it's a secret podcast. I'm in recording stages now, and it's going to be called Busting the Bro Myths, where we take some of these things that the bros are saying, and it's not about them being wrong or bad, but it needs more nuance. A lot of these things that you hear all the time, if you try to implement them at face value, which, let's be real, there's really no instruction book, but what the catchphrase is. You try to implement it at face value, then you don't get all this other stuff. Maybe you'll force money to happen, but ultimately, can you sustain that? So I'm going to add some nuance to some of these catchphrases that you hear all the time and present a different lens and a more nuanced take and tell you exactly what to do to build a business based on these things that take the good from what the bros are saying, but also add some more flexibility, some more life into them so that they're implementable and you get an instruction book. If you want access to this, I'm collecting a wait list so that you'll be the first in the door when I finally release it. So go to thefoundershift.com and that'll take you to the podcast page. You'll see Busting the Bro Myths right up on top, and you can put in your email and add yourself to that wait list. I'm really hoping to see you in there. But back to this podcast. Let's talk about the new rules because that's the main thing that I want to leave you with today. You can definitely force a business into existence that produces a lot of money for you. But I'm more interested in building structures that create lifetime value. So that's rule number one. We design for lifetime value. We don't design for overwhelm. We don't design for the lowest common denominator, all the mistakes that could happen. We look at your business and we're going to talk about how to create lifetime value. But back to this podcast, what I really want to give you in this episode are the new rules of founder leadership. Rules that will allow you to break free from this expectation that you are working 24/7 or you won't survive, that it needs to be an empire or nothing, right? There's so much nuance, so much gray area in between that's available to us. And so I've developed new rules to think about. Rule number one: lifetime value over short term gain. This is a tough one, especially if you're funded, because you know what? You're not always the one who gets to choose that value system. But even still, if you're focusing on value, then it means more than next quarter. It means a business that can live for the long term and not just one that's going to survive till next quarter. When you're ready for growth stage, it can be so tempting to just focus on the next pivot, focus on the next quarter, survive, right? You've been in survival mode a long time as the operator, as a solopreneur when you were just starting out. And sometimes those behaviors follow us into growth stage. Keep tabs on them and try to make different choices as you're free to do so, as your business grows and produces more and brings on different people. The founders who really win long term have a much more broad focus. It's value, it's the needle movers, it's the stuff that really matters to your clients that maybe you can't put a hard dollar sign behind, but they create loyalty, they create customer lifetime value. So it's only you know what that is. It's different in every business, but what can you do this year that creates lifetime value, value forever? And not just survival mode, not just maintenance mode. What can you add? What can you do differently? What can you eliminate? It's the frameworks behind your business that are different and unique. In my world, we are ditching the vanity metrics and we're putting them aside in favor of real long term growth and sustainability. We're zooming out to the big picture, the future that you want. We're going to collapse time and we're going to start acting like you're already there, like you're already living it. Rule number two: impact over performance. You might not expect me to say this because I do come from the HR world, but I always hated the word performance. It felt so shallow and performative to me, right? It's like the image of success in the box checking, right? The get your head down and stay in your lane and just produce, produce, produce. This is what creates this habit that a lot of us carry forward of just getting your head down and working to the bone, and one day you look back and you realize the business is dependent on you and you cannot step away and you lose those choices. No matter how much money you have, you lose the wealth of choices that money is supposed to provide. If you've ever been in corporate, you know most of the time the loudest voices, not the best workers, are the ones who get recognized. You can even look inside your own workflow. The most visible stuff is often the stuff that we celebrate, but there are so many levels behind what's visible in your business. It's the quiet contributors. Even within your own workday, right? That really move that needle. So we're looking at that with more of a critical lens. Most companies still have no idea of the impact some of the choices and decisions that are made at the leadership level, at the founder level, what impact those choices have, both positive and not so positive. They also don't know as leaders how to ladder up the most frontline employees' work to the strategy of the business. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because no one ever taught them how to do that. That's true strategic thinking, and it needs to be infused across your whole organization. And again, when I say organization, it sounds really big. I'm talking about this applies whether you're a team of two or a team of 100 or 1,000. And I've worked in every size of organization. I can tell you this is the same across the board. Those upstream and downstream impacts need to be understood by even the interns in your company. They need to understand how their work matters, why it matters, how it's ultimately helping towards the mission that you both care about. That's why instead of performance, we're going to talk about impact. We're going to talk about how these early choices that you make in growth stage will impact your business forever. Number three, we are enough. We are smart enough. We are strong enough to take what we can learn from the very visible examples of founder leadership, but also to invent something new for ourselves that never has been done before. We get to chart a new course. The world is hungry for people like us to step up, to deliver, to prove that you can do this differently. You can do startup culture differently. You can do early stage business differently. I'm not saying we throw out the whole startup playbook. There's so much to learn, but we have to develop the choice for ourselves. Does this advice align with me? Or do I want to create something new? And I don't care how small you're starting out. You can be the example in your industry of how founder leadership can look. I want to make it okay to follow only parts of the status quo advice and how other people have built instead of just implementing what people say because they look successful and they have money. We don't know what it looks like behind the scenes. We don't know if all of their employees are miserable and leaving every 2 weeks. We don't know if, they ever see their families and friends. And look, this is not about hating on the guys. We love men too. I have my own businessmen and male leaders that I really look up to and respect. And also, at the same time, we have to recognize that we are women in a male dominated space. And some of the advice out there just is lacking for us. It needs more nuance, it needs more flexibility, and it's not implementable off the shelf. We need to put our own spin on it, and it's okay to do that. You don't have to want an empire in order to grow. You can be wildly successful with 2 to 5 employees. And if you want to grow to 500 or 1,000 employees, we can help with that too. But the point is, this is your vision, this is your choice, and you don't have to take what's off the shelf right now and implement it as is in order to be successful. You can create something different, even if this is your first time scaling to the level that you're at. That gray area, that space, I think that's where we can live. We can pick a point on that growth trajectory that matches what we want for our business, but also our lives. We can decide what is the right size for us, what is the right level, what are the right employees, and we can create something that's very strategic, purposeful, mindful, and we can grow from there. It doesn't have to be empire or nothing. We get to redefine this space. And that's why this podcast exists. Let me tell you how I know this. Here's the thing, I've been the people side of business scale for almost 2 decades now. I've worked in all types of growing startups, mostly in founder led business, but also in Fortune 500 and in highly established 100-plus-year-old organizations all over the world. But because I have seen every single stage of growth and worked on growth with the founder in almost every case, it's given me kind of X-ray vision into the specific solutions that work in all stages, ways of working, tactics for leading, methods of growth, and how to design a business that scales itself instead of you having to react to every change. I will never forget the moment that I decided there has to be another way to do this. I was working with a very well established mission driven organization, and they were located overseas in the Asia Pacific region. So it was 9 p.m. my time. I was already, between you and me, on the verge of like my third burnout in 4 years. So I was already pretty tired. I had just won a project, and you would think that's a really exciting thing. And at first, I was excited because it was all about change. It was about helping, it was about leadership, it was about helping the organization adapt to the new world. It was somewhere post COVID. And I always run a kickoff in these types of engagements. So I was with a client who was a lovely person. And we dug into the reasoning behind the training and we were talking about more things that were happening in the organization. And I realized this is not a training project. Not really. That was what I was hired to do, and I had to do it that way. But ultimately, I wanted to work with this problem over here that would have actually made an impact for the people instead of training them to adapt to the situation that was actually just fixable. And I got called in to fix things like this all the time. As it was, the training was fine, respectable. I will probably go into the development process and all the mistakes I made with this training a little bit later on in our time together. But I didn't feel like it was my best work because ultimately I wasn't actually fixing the problem for the client. I was sort of putting a band aid on a broken bone. What they actually needed was a little bit of org redesign. It was a leadership mindset shift that would have ultimately had a really positive impact on all the employees and given them an example to work from. And they needed to rethink how they were approaching this challenge to begin with so that wouldn't be about a knowledge transfer. It would have been a true organization wide behavioral transformation, ways of working, flexibility as an action. You know what I mean? Um, there's only so much you can do with the training modality. I would rather get under the hood and really work on the things that were actually happening in this moment on that night to do another thing that I felt was just not actually going to fix the problem. It was too much for me. And I had this real moment of clarity across every single stage of business. Every single scenario that I got called in to fix had a very similar solution. And again, it was org design. It was simple practices that you can put into place. And I thought, what if I could go to the beginning and give women founders, any founder really who takes this seriously and really wants to build something that lasts, but especially women founders, because I think the examples out there just really don't give us a blueprint that's very authentic and aligned to us. I wanted to build a business for the proactive strategists, the ones who see themselves at that moment of growth. And instead of wanting to just being okay with just reacting to it, reacting to the symptoms, I wanted to work with the ones who were willing to go back to basics and really think about how to design for growth instead of just react to it. The founders who care about healthy cultures and were ready to challenge themselves to work in a new way, to open themselves up for more time, more money, more fulfillment. You don't have to choose. You don't. So here's what to expect in this space going forward. Now, I've mentioned to you, my expertise is people, and that includes you. We're going to design custom roles, leadership practices, because leadership is a skill set. It's not a personality type, and new functionalities in your business that really move the needle for growth stage without running people into the ground or getting bottlenecked by old habits, because they will sneak up on you. What my experience has taught me is that collaboration, innovation, growth, change, these are all things that can be designed into your business from day one and not things that just happen to you. So I'm here to put an org design spin on all of these common goals and challenges. And I'm going to show you how to design a business that stands the test of time and change. And I have got an incredible list of people to introduce you to. So sometimes it'll be just us in an episode chatting over coffee. Other times you are going to get to know an absolutely stellar lineup of guests that I have planned for you. There are people who are bringing new creative approaches and ideas to the world of scaling and growth. Approaches that I like to call strategic abundance. Growth that feels good, helps others, and nourishes the soul, not just your pocketbook. So there's three types of people that I'm going to bring you. One, extremely experienced founders who have been there, scaled that. They are here to quite vulnerably put themselves out there and tell you what were the mistakes that they made when they were scaling. What are the choices that really changed the game for them and allowed them to access that level of more that they personally wanted. They're also going to share with you some important lessons that they learned the hard way so that maybe you don't have to. But I'm also bringing you peers. I'm bringing you people who are also in growth stage, who are working on trying new things, doing it differently. Maybe they're at that magic $1 million mark, or maybe they're getting there. Maybe they're multi six figures like you, and they are on the track and they're seeing results from doing things a little bit differently. Either way, there's a lot to learn from people who are in the same moment as you. And the third type of guest is that I'm also going to bring you expertise from other areas. My expertise is people, but we've also got people with ops backgrounds, customer experience, marketing, branding, and so many other specialty leaders who are huge parts of the scaling experience. And yes, there will be men too, in case you are wondering. Some of the leaders I admire most are the men who decided either from the beginning or by learning the hard way that they wanted to build something different too, something more sustainable, something that made room for their life. And they've gotten there in all sorts of different ways. So you get expertise from so many different minds and so many different facets of the growth and scaling experience. So I am so excited for you to come on this journey with me. And I mentioned this earlier, but if you want to go even more deeply into the new rules of founder leadership, the new rules of scaling, and the recast of all the typical advice that you normally hear about it, then I want you to go to thefoundershift.com. Don't forget thefoundershift.com. And that'll bring you to the podcast page where you can find the link to sign up for Busting the Bro Myths, the secret podcast that I'm only sending out to people who are requesting it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me in this introductory episode. I am so excited to dive in again next time. Thank you so much for joining me and stay tuned.